throughout my career, I've become exposed to various different things in business. And I think it starts with that curiosity, is that I'm interested in people, I'm interested in life, I'm interested in the natural world. If you celebrate every one of those milestones, each one of those milestones, even though it's not the total goal, can feel exactly like reaching the big goal. So you can go along the way and have 10 celebrations of the momentum towards it, and you get to the big goal and celebrate that as well.
Happy birthday to you.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the No Half Cakes podcast. My name is Jim Sabellico, and today I have a very special guest for you. Before we get into that, just a quick reminder, if you're new here, Wednesdays we do our full-length episodes, which is what this is. Saturdays we have a strategy sprinkle. It's a short, tactical, practical tip to help you level up in your life in some way. And Mondays I do a Mindset Monday, which is a positive, powerful mindset to help you start the week. But today's episode, I have with us a special guest, a man who has written, I believe, 10 books, over 8 million words, someone who is a fan of music, photography, marketing, writing, cooking. We have a lot of the same common interests, so I believe this will be a fun conversation to have. Joining us all the way from Australia, Mr. Hunter Leonard.
Oh, g'day, Jim. Nice to be with you, mate. Thank you very much. Yeah.
You as well. So I definitely, I'm interested in all of those topics. Like I said, there's a lot of commonality there. I think the first question that really comes to mind is, how do you get involved in so many things?
Well, it probably all starts with just being curious about life for me. I mean, I remember back to when I was a child, I used to run around and collect tadpoles and then put them in tanks and watch them turn into frogs. And I'd constantly have insects in my room at home, collecting butterflies and all sorts of stuff. So I was always interested in the natural world, and I think it probably used to freak my mum out when she'd come in and try and do any cleaning on the room when I was a teenager. But and then I suppose throughout my career, I've become exposed to various different things in business, and I think it starts with that curiosity, is that I'm interested in people, I'm interested in life, I'm interested in the natural world. And I've been fortunate to have people around me who've encouraged that interest or just let me be me over the years, which has been really cool. And I probably started with my mum. I mean, she was happy enough for me to be a boy and run around and scrape my knees and collect insects and bugs and, do all the boy stuff. And when I started working in a plant nursery, she was the first person to introduce me and tell me what plants were what and give me the names and all that sort of thing. So she was always very supportive of that. And that's pretty much the way I've rolled for the rest of my life, is when I get interested in something, I like to then delve into it and try and become good at it. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you think, having that sort of environment as a kid where you had that ability to be yourself and to explore and to learn things and have that, that search for magic kind of where you look, gave you that opportunity now, you'd say?
Yeah, totally. Because you can also compare that to times in your life when it hasn't happened. I've used to work for other people, and I run my own business now. And definitely certain jobs that I had people that I worked with who were the opposite. They would try and not necessarily try and crush you, but their approach to life was to shut down any creativity or ideas and try and get you to fit a particular formula that they wanted, or they had a particular, demanding style of me. And I would then notice that difference, and I'd usually try and exit stage left from those environments pretty quickly, because I've always been someone who's liked to collaborate rather than force, if you like. So when I work with clients in our business now, it's very much a collaboration of they've engaged us to do something specifically. They trust us to do that work for them, and they treat us as equals rather than as servants, if you like. So I definitely like concept of equals rather than servants, for sure.
Yeah, and I would imagine that diverse background and all those different hobbies probably helps and serves you in a lot of areas too, because you have that much more knowledge and that much more depth to lean on.
Yeah, I mean, it's knowledge and depth for sure, but it's also, I find that, like, for example, if I play music for an hour or so, I get my guitar out and I play some music, and then I actually will write better when I'm the next session of writing because I've had some other way of, I don't know, extroverting myself or getting some joy in what I'm doing, and then the writing isn't as, isn't an issue because I can come back to that fresh and I've done something else. So that moving from one activity to another, I find quite energizing as well, because you're not just grinding away at one thing. And in fact, if I'm writing and I start to feel it's grinding a bit, I'll just go and do something else, go and have a walk or work on some other client activity or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, it actually reminds me a little bit of a conversation I was having with my son yesterday about playing sports. He's 10 years old and he still gets a little nervous sometimes when he's in a game that he's going to do the right thing or remember the right position to be in with his feet. And the conversation we had was about, like, when you go out there, you got to trust that you know what to do. Like, you've done the practices, you know where to be, but stop thinking about how to play the game and just focus on having fun. Like, focus on just going and enjoying the moment and being there, and just enjoy the process of actually playing the game, hanging out with your friends, making these memories. And sure enough, when he goes and does that and he stops thinking so heavily about where do I have to be, what do I have to do with my hands, where do I have to put my feet, and just plays, his level of play is that much better. And it reminded me a lot of, what you were saying, like when you're able to kind of just enjoy what you're doing and you want to go hang out for an hour and play the guitar, the quality of all your output, I would imagine, increases after that. Even probably, I'm going to go out on a limb and say even the quality of relationships probably improves based on the joy that having those kind of activities is in your life.
Totally, because there's enough in life that present a challenge that you have to overcome. And, learning the guitar wasn't easy for me because I started out playing the bass guitar, which only has 4 strings. So you add another 2 and then you got to learn chords and other things as opposed to single notes. And there's no doubt there was times that it was frustrating and, annoying that I couldn't play a certain chord or whatever. But I think sometimes having that challenge and overcoming a challenge to get to a point where you can just have joy at whatever level. I mean, I'm not, your listeners might be familiar with Tommy Emmanuel, who's an amazing Australian guitar player, and he's incredible. I'm no Tommy Emmanuel, but I can play to a certain level, and I can play quite a few songs, and I can get up in front of an audience and play some music for a while. But I think the challenge is what makes that joyful, and I think my search is always when I'm wanting to do something, I want to get to a point where not only do I enjoy it, but I'm creating a really lovely impact on somebody else. So if I cook a meal for family and friends and I've had a bit of a challenge to put together a particular menu and I cook a meal and they like it, well, for me, that's awesome because I've achieved the goal of that particular exercise, if you like.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of alignment in that. I'm starting to realize in the art that you produce, whether it's photography, food, writing, you are creating something from your heart and giving it to someone else to consume and enjoy. Right? And there's probably a lot of your heart and soul that you put into those items. And when people receive joy and in consuming those things, I imagine that really helps fulfill that for you too, right?
Yeah, totally. And I do see, as an author, I mean, it's become quite popular these days to write a book and publish it for the purposes of supporting your own personal brand or your business or whatever. But I won't write a book unless I actually have a purpose, which is to share something with a group of people. So whether I've written for mature age people on ending ageism and how do they get a job after the age of 50, or if I'm writing for a business owner who wants to just get better at their marketing program, I'm really writing it to be able to share that information. I'm not writing it in order to necessarily encourage them to then hire me as a consultant, if you know what I mean. So, and I think having that pure purpose of doing it to share, you get, of course, you then get the work. People will come and ask you, a certain percentage will say, well, can you help me beyond what I've read in the book? And that's lovely when somebody does, but I don't think you can make it, if you try and make it a sort of having an agenda behind doing it other than sharing some information, then I think it becomes a little bit. For me, I don't get the enjoyment out of it if I'm having to write something with an agenda, if you like. I'd rather just share openly, and then if somebody does want to engage me based on what they've read in the book, they're getting the real me in the book, if you know what I mean. It's not something like here's half the secret, and if you engage me for $10,000, you can get the other half. I'd rather just give them the whole secret, and then they can decide if they want to work with us or not.
Yeah, and I would tend to imagine that the relationships and the customers and that sort of thing is on a much deeper level, because you could write a book. I wrote a book for the purpose of validating a certain business aspect, and I hate it. To be honest with you, it has no soul to it, and I won't even use it to advertise because to me, it doesn't have that same joy. And could I use it to get customers? Sure. But at what benefit? It would become a drag to me to have to maintain those relationships that are built on something that isn't joy-based. It's built on something that I use as a ploy, and I don't love that feeling. So definitely, I agree with you. When you put your heart and soul into something, even though the payoff may not be as immediate as trying to do something to get a customer in the door tomorrow, I think the reward is definitely way bigger.
Yeah, totally. And I'm definitely all about longer term relationships with our clients rather than short term project based or, I do short term stuff, but mostly our clients are fairly long term. I was actually just got off the phone a minute ago with one of our clients. He's been a client for 20 years. So it's, he happens to be, we now live 15 hours drive apart. It's like when we first started the business, we were half an hour up the road, and I used to go to his office all the time. And now 20 years later, we live in different states, and he happens to be driving through with his daughter. He's taking her, she's a show jumper, and he's taking her to a competition. So actually we'll get to see him face to face for the first time in a little while, but he's almost become a friend now after 20 years. Yes, we have a business relationship, but it's also a friendship as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So speaking of 20 years, I know ageism is a topic that you have a lot of experience on. Talk to me a little bit about that, because it's not a topic that gets a lot of conversation, and honestly, a topic I'm not super familiar with. I don't see it a lot in my circles, I guess, but I would love to kind of hear a little bit on your perspective there.
Yeah, sure. Look, to give you the 2 minute, because there's so much to this issue. It's quite not complex, but there's just a lot to it. About 10 years or so ago, I discovered in the course of revisiting a business model for my marketing business that one of my mentors said to me, have you thought about having mature age people involved in your business? And I said, well, I don't really care what age they are as long as they can do the job. And he sort of said, well, maybe go and do a bit of research, because I think I've seen some data that that's not true. Mature age people are seen as somewhat lessened than a younger generation in the workplace. And as it turned out, that is true. So the macro trends, if we talk about it, is that we live in a world that's aging. Most Western nations have a population which is getting older and older over time in terms of the average age. There's the baby boomer population, which has been a big, group of people are all now retiring at the rate of, I think in the US, it's probably 10,000 people a week or something like that are retiring from that age group, maybe even more. And at the same time as we've got an aging population, we've also got an interesting dynamic that a lot of organisations don't want to employ mature age people. And I think the biggest percentage of organisations that have an age above which they're reluctant to hire, even though legally they're not allowed to discriminate on age in most Western nations, is about 50. So if you've got people living to 80 or 90 and they're being potentially blocked from working from the age of 50, that leaves this enormous gap where they've got to get themselves financially ready for whenever they choose to retire, and that retirement age is getting older and older. So people are not now retiring at the age of mid-60s. It's more like an average of closer to 70, and I reckon that's probably going to push up into the mid-70s over the next couple of decades because people can't fund a 40-year retirement. So with those two trends of an aging population and ageism sort of embedded in the workplace, there's a lot to be done to be able to get organisations to come around to the idea that actually you should have a workforce that matches the population. In other words, you have people of all ages working in the workforce, young, middle-aged, and older, because that gives you this benefit of the different experiences and wisdom of different age groups. More mature people have certain skills, younger people have skills. So it's about creating this sort of multi-generational workforce by removing this barrier of ageism, which we're talking trillions of dollars of economic benefit if we get it right across the world. So it's a seriously big thing, because otherwise governments are going to have to fund all of these retirees who've not been able to work as much as they wanted to because they were being discriminated against based on their age. So it's an interesting topic that I've delved quite a bit into with one of our businesses, in terms of trying to help those people who are being discriminated against sort of make that transition into self-employment and running their own business, where that ageism kind of goes away, because they're using their expertise to run a business where they can engage with people, on an equal basis.
Yeah. Now, I'd imagine even apart from the economic cost, there's probably a human cost, if you will, to the emotional aspect of, as you're aging, starting to feel a little bit less useful, right? So you're not as physically able as you used to be, or what does that look like for someone who's now in their 50s and starting to feel less, I don't know, capable, feel less purposeful, and kind of lose a little bit of their identity?
Yeah, totally. Because if they're already feeling that themselves, and then they get that feedback from society that, yes, indeed, that's the way we think of you, then that certainly reinforces that. And I'm sure plenty of your listeners have known someone who retired and then unfortunately passed away fairly shortly afterwards, because they lost the purpose that they had in life, which was work. So you can see that if you bring that forward into your, rather than that being in the 60s, it now starts to occur in the 50s. And for many women who cop the double whammy of ageism and sexism, it's happening in their 40s, which is when they've just got over the fact of having kids and getting into teenage years, and maybe a few of them are starting to, fly the nest. They're getting ageism. So they've had sexism, and they've got pay discrepancy from being female and having to have kids, and now they've got ageism. It's just a triple whammy. So there's definitely a human cost associated with it. So which then leads to a community cost, which then leads to an economic cost. So they all sort of interrelate, if you like.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think you said there, which sparked the thought for me, is for someone who stops working and they've made or they found purpose in their work, it made me think of, for the people who are able to do, like you were saying before, and find the joy in all of the things that they do, whether it's photography, whether it's writing, whether it's playing the guitar, they're able to find that same level of joy and purpose in every human interaction, not just their 9 to 5. I would imagine that helps to kind of relieve that pressure from them, so they're able to kind of get that joy and that purpose, not just in their work, but in their entire life. How do you feel that relates?
Yeah, totally. Look, I think that whole of self, if you like, I think it's important. Like, I bring that to my own work, and I think it's important for many people, but I think mature men in particular are well known for having their identity almost completely associated with their title or their job or whatever they do. So they struggle more often than women with that connection into their communities and the different groups they're part of. Women just tend to be more sociable in regards to that. I don't mean men are antisocial. It just means they have less networks outside of their work networks. So actually, one of the books I read, and it's not the purpose of the conversation, but I called it the experience equation. And the idea was to get mature age people to sit there and actually examine all parts of their life and say, well, what can my plan be based on all of the parts of my life? So yes, there's a financial component. I'm not a financial expert, but people talk about financial plans and preparing for retirement from a money perspective, but there's also the preparing for which groups do you want to be part of. Used to play, your son plays, is it baseball he plays or football? What's
he plays lacrosse.
Okay, awesome. What a great game. So, but as we get older, we tend to transition to the types of sports we play. We play less contact sport and maybe move into, maybe it's golf or it's for me, it's bushwalking, or I row, or whatever. So our sports kind of transition. So as we get into mature age, maybe it's time to start rethinking. We've been part of the cricket club or the lacrosse club or the golf club. Are we going to move to bowls or bushwalking or, I don't know, yoga, whatever that is? But the book was all about saying, well, have a look at your groups that you're part of, because one of the benefits of having those connections is if they do get into trouble from a work perspective or a financial perspective, they have a broader network of people they can reach out to say, hey, I'm looking for an opportunity. I need a new job, or I want to start my own business, or maybe I'll take my expertise and become get into the gig economy and maybe work for a few small businesses and share my expertise that I brought out to corporate. Having those broader networks is certainly important from that perspective as well, because otherwise you're tapping back into the work network that's kind of rejected you, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I can see a lot of identity issues there, especially like you said, for men too. I think a big part of it, not only just the lack of networks, but I think a lot of that stems from a lack of willingness to be open and vulnerable, whether it's fear of being judged as not manly or pride or ego. But I see a tremendous amount of that where people are afraid to admit they have feelings, they have emotions, that they struggle with things, that they need help, or they can't just, man up and do it themselves. And, I think it's a large reason why I have these conversations, is to show that, hey, you can still be a man, you can still do all the manly things you want to do, but it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to have struggles and real things. And like, life is not always going to be sunshine and rainbows. I've talked a lot about, in the past, I used to make money, kind of the scoreboard of success for me, where it was how much money did I make? What did the car look like? What did the house look like? Like, that was what success looked like. And then I realized I had no life. I had no relationship. I had no relationship with my kids. I was in the worst physical shape of my life. Like, I wasn't winning, and once I changed the conversation to, hey, success is not about the money, but it's about your core values, right? It's your physical health, your spiritual health, your relational health, your, like all those different areas. But that's not a conversation that people are having. And, it's people like yourself who are having these conversations, helping look out for other people, that I think is starting to change that narrative in society.
Yeah, totally. And, my tribe, if you like, the people that I like to look after are people that run businesses. So that's who I work with. And I think everything we do, even though we might be, I'm in the middle of a new book at the moment, and the idea is to broaden the skill base of that person that's running the business so that they can extract more fun and joy and, enhancement out of the business beyond just it being a money-making machine. Because at the end of the day, when we, particularly small to medium enterprises where it's proprietor owned, if you like, or family run, or run by an individual who is the force behind it, they tend to be a really integral part of our community as well. A lot of these businesses, they'll have some purpose beyond making money that they want to support. They might support the local footy club or the lacrosse club, or they might help on domestic violence things, or they might help, like we do, on the environment. We support an organisation in Australia called Landcare, so I help them out with some pro bono time, and we dig weeds and plant trees and stuff like that. So I think if we can break down the barrier of thinking that as a business owner, we're an island, making money in a business, and in fact we're actually part of the community, a real community, not a virtual one as well. I think this idea is a lot of social media interaction these days, particularly the next generation of business owners, they're not getting out and being connected into their communities as much as mature business owners are. So I think for the next generation, that's kind of going to be my advice, is just make sure you have those fingers of connections out into the community, whether it's supporting a local group or whether it's being a member of the local Chamber of Commerce or whatever it is. Just be out in the community and understand what the community needs beyond just what your customers need and want as well, because that's just going to make people enjoy the whole process of running a business better. which is just one particular segment of the population that you're talking about. That it's bringing whole of life to the business. They used to say, bring yourself to work, right? You go to work and you've got a hat, and the hat is, I'm a product manager. And so your whole existence is, well, I got to write a marketing plan, I got to do some research, blah, 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 blah. But in fact, you're Jim or you're Hunter or you're Susan or whatever. You're more than just what your business card says.
Yeah. And how much of that do you think is reliant on the business owner to kind of set the culture that the business is there to serve first, not to make money first? Because I think it goes a little bit about what we talked about before in writing that book. Like, if the purpose of the book was to generate leads and money, the quality would suffer, right? It would still perform the job, but it would not be as impactful, and it wouldn't be as long lasting. And I think a lot of business owners look at, hey, I want to be financially secure. Let me start my own business so I could work for myself and have all this freedom. But I'm sure, as you know, like, owning your own business, sure, that's possible, but it's going to take a long time to get to that, and it's a grind. It's, you got to really be dedicated to it.
Yeah, totally. Look, owning a business doesn't to use the words that you're using, it's no cakewalk, that's for sure. You do. I mean, I've had what I call blood noses, experiences where I've had bad debt, really crappy clients, staff that haven't done their job, issues with quality, all sorts of stuff, and it can be tough, and it does take time. But I totally agree with you that the whole idea has to be to serve first. It's interesting, actually, what we're seeing right now, and you've probably had these conversations with other guests, is that we're seeing a massive transition to online commerce. So I think it's like a quarter of all transactions worldwide are now being done online. But what's occurred is that businesses are pulling away from their customers. So they're putting in front of the customer a chatbot. They're putting in front of the customer frequently asked questions. They're taking their phone numbers and their contact details and their team names off the website. So now we've got no human connection. We've got a customer, a website, and a business not talking to each other. Customers most people are reasonably happy to buy stuff online. They're happy to put their credit card in and buy the shoes or the tea and coffee for the office and whatever there, because it's convenient. You can just do it from your desk and you can get it. But the research now says that 90% of people who buy online, when they have a problem, they want to speak to a human to solve it. So if that doesn't say something about us as a species, I don't know what it's saying is we're not rejecting the idea of online commerce. We're happy with that. That's fine. But when we need something more than just a transaction, we want the human. We don't want the chatbot. We don't want the frequently asked questions. We don't want to be chucked in a roundabout of sitting on the phone pressing 15 different buttons before we can actually speak to someone. We want companies to be bringing themselves to that place so that we can have a conversation, much like it would have happened back in the 1400s in Italy, in a market in the middle of Perugia or something, when somebody was selling some ham sandwiches or whatever.
I mean, there's some level of connection at that point, right?
There was. Every business owner knew every person in the village. And if we were to use those terms, I think it's particularly for small to medium enterprises who don't have necessarily hundreds of thousands of customers, that if you can bring the human to your culture and make sure that you're there to serve a person one at a time first, the rest will take care of itself. But never forget that. I would never put a technology solution in between you and the customer. Put the technology solution to the side so it enables the conversation to continue, takes care of all the grunt work and the manual and the mundane sort of stuff, but make sure the human connection is still there. And that includes with your staff, that you want them to bring themselves to the table and bring themselves to work as a whole human, not just as a admin assistant or a customer service manager or whatever. So,
yeah, it reminds me of a conversation I actually had yesterday with my staff about using AI tools to do certain things, and will it ever replace us as, individuals on the team? And so from my position, I'm a big proponent in using AI for certain things, because there are a lot of things that we should not be wasting our time doing. If I can take a task off your plate, which is very manual, very repetitive, doesn't require a lot of brain power, it's just busy work. If I can take that and automate it and get a similar result, it's not client facing, but it frees you up as a person to use your gifting. I think that's the right use case, right? It's not meant to replace customer service teams or people in business, but I think it's meant to supplement and to free up your time to be able to use your gift to share with other people.
Yeah, totally. And it probably gets back to that point of saying, if you're just implementing a technology solution to cut costs, well, then that's the wrong attitude. The right attitude is, can I implement a technology solution so I can serve my customers better? And then check with the customers that they're actually being served better, because that's an important thing. Like, if we did this solution, would this work for you? And the customers go, that's fantastic, thanks. I would love to be able to just use the technology for that. But as long as I can give you a call and say you stuffed up on something, or I can give you, you know what I mean? I think that's a perfect approach to it. Best way to think about it.
Yeah, and there's 4 words which are so freaking simple that people just do not ask in a conversation. And I look at these as relationships, right? Your relationship with a customer, even if it's, someone you don't really know beyond just their name in your CRM system, still a relationship. Do you feel served? That's it. Do you feel served? And if the answer is not a resounding yes, fix your process. Like, you can use the AI if you need to, and if it's going to solve the problem and they feel served, they feel loved, seen, heard, and appreciated, great, cool, everyone's happy with that. But if they don't feel served, you can't just use it to replace and to automate and to try and scale and to try and pad your piggy bank. It's going to result in failure.
Which is interesting. I had an experience with that just today. We're just financing a new company car, and the guy I used to use, he knows me, right? So he doesn't need to check my identity. he knows me, but we went to a new, he's moved on, so we had to go to a new supplier, and they're great. Their service is awesome, really personable, great people. But the company they've used to do the finance for this particular thing uses automated identity checking, which was fine, but what it ended up meaning is I had to walk around the car and take photos of the car. Then I had to upload my driver's license, but my driver's license has a new address on the back of it, but the system only allowed me to upload the front page of the driver's license. So then I had to ring him to say, how do I get, and then it just became this whole, now I'm wasting time proving who I am when the guy used to be who I was. So that's a perfect example of the technology being had a reasonable concept to support being able to get that done, but it's sort of added a barrier to the process, which to what even to as tiny extent does make you feel a little bit less interested in dealing with that business another time in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of those businesses, they use a thing like that to remove an employee from the system. They don't have to pay a guy to do that and have that conversation with you. They can just use a tool and, basically get you to do the work for free.
But if they knew you wouldn't need it anyway. Which, if you know your customers, you don't need to prove their identity.
So I have a couple additional questions I'd love to ask if I could. Question number 1 for you: if you had one bit of advice to give to someone to have a better day, like some little piece of actionable advice or mindset shift or just a perspective that you've learned along your journey, what would that perspective be?
That's a really good question. I would, to have a better day, I would definitely say focus on the big things that matter in your life. In other words, on a day-to-day basis, it's important. I mean, everyone knows Steve Covey's concept of big rocks. You put the big rocks in your plan and you make sure, but I think you've got to do that every day. For me, it's like, well, okay, if I don't know on a daily basis that the things I'm doing are contributing to the big things, then I'm doing the wrong thing. So I actually have a battle plan that I write every day, which has the important stuff on it. And so my first focus is get the important stuff done. which might include having an hour playing the guitar or going for a bushwalk or whatever, but important stuff for my clients, I know then that what I'm completing is actually the important stuff. So, and it's different to a to-do list. To-do list is your idea. What you were talking about, it's busy work. It's I've got to go to the shops, I've got to fix the tire, I've got to mow the lawn, that's all fine. They're things that have to be done. But if the important stuff to you, like for me, if I'm writing a book, then obviously clearly an important thing will be to get some words written on that book every single day that I'm working on that book. And if I have a day where I don't get that done, then I haven't contributed to what I consider from my own viewpoint a great day. Because you're the driver of your own existence. You're the only one that can say what does a great day look like for you.
Right. And you would say that it's pretty important to get those things done first thing in the day before the day kind of gets away from you?
Is just start the day with the most important stuff. And if that's time with the kids, time with the family, bushwalk with your wife, breakfast with your wife, so you've got a good start to the day before you head off to work, whatever it is for you, get them done, because the life will chuck stuff at you. You'll get somebody turn up or ring you and say, oh, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah is not necessarily important for you. But sometimes you might have to handle it because, that's life. You might have to handle something that's urgent. But I'm doing it. I'm in the middle of a particular program for myself, personal development, and that's the first thing I do each day is I do that, and then it's done. And I know every day I've actually done something towards it. So probably to summarize that, it's have a battle plan that's got the important stuff on it.
And do that every day.
Yep.
Good. I love that. So my next question is a bit of an odd question, but this wouldn't be the No Half Cake podcast if we didn't talk about cake at some point. What is your favorite flavor or variety of cake? And is there some type of special memory associated with it?
Well, and I don't mean to be opposing that, but I actually don't eat a lot of sweet food. I'm more of a savory person. But if I had to have a piece of cake, it would have to be probably a Polish cheesecake.
What is a Polish cheesecake? I'm not familiar.
Type of cheesecake recipe that is made in Poland. I have no connection to Poland other than my wife has some Polish ancestry. But the reason I like that is it's a cheesecake, so it's got a bit of savoury to it as well because you're putting different cheeses in it. But the special memory is actually just I cooked that for a meal for Nicole, my wife, for her 40th birthday. We had a party, and because she's got Irish and Polish descent, I had half Polish food and half Irish food, and we had 8 or 10 people around for dinner, and it was just a fantastic evening. So that the connection for me with food and cake, if you like, or whatever, is the moments that you have in family and friends where you share really, a celebration or a particular event or just a really special time with friends and family, which is what food is there for me.
Yeah, it's I think it can't be understated how important it is to celebrate moments and to live your life and enjoy it. Especially things like birthday celebrations, and it's obviously a topic that's near and dear to my heart. But life is so fragile, and we take for granted the opportunity that we're going to get tomorrow to do our to-do list. And I think to kind of tie those things together, if we don't have some urgency in our day, that battle plan, right? If we just assume, hey, I can get to it tomorrow, or I can mend that relationship tomorrow, or I can solve that problem tomorrow, or I can grind through today because I'll find joy tomorrow without knowing that tomorrow is promised. And I think that's, at least for me, a very important reason why it's important to find joy in everything you do, in every day, in every experience, and to just live this life for all it's worth.
Yeah, totally. And one of the really cool things that somebody said to me once is, once you've had that day of where you've added some joy, or you've added some joy for someone else or whatever else, the next time you have a shitty day, you can actually draw on that. It's kind of a vault of, you add it, it gets added up. It doesn't just disappear. If you have a really great week, and you have one bad day, well, that one bad day can be seen in context. But if you allow yourself to have 7 bad days in a row, then you're not drawing on the joy or the fun or the excitement. We actually say to business owners too, is you could have a big goal for the year, but if you don't celebrate each of the milestones towards that, I'll put it another way, if you celebrate every one of those milestones, each one of those milestones, even though it's not the total goal, can feel exactly like reaching the big goal. So you can go along the way and have 10 celebrations of the momentum towards it, and you get to the big goal and celebrate that as well. You haven't missed out on the opportunity to sort of, acknowledge people's journey and what they've achieved in small bites, because you never know. You might not get the chance tomorrow. You're right. You've had a win, celebrate the win. Whether it's to go and buy yourself a coffee or a cake with the staff, or whether it's to, I don't know, get yourself a gift because you want a new client, or donate some money because you want a new client. You should definitely celebrate those milestones every chance you get, for sure.
I agree. Well, listen, I genuinely appreciate your time, and I do hope that you and Nicole, was your wife's name, right? I hope that you and Nicole enjoy a nice Polish cheesecake real soon. I appreciate this time. Is there any parting words or anywhere that people could go and find your work, support you in any way?
Yeah, sure. Look, they can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Hunter Leonard. There's not too many Hunter Leonards around, so they should be able to find me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, they can go to our website, bluefrogmarketing.com.au, and all my books are there, and all the stuff we do with our clients and supporting the environment and stuff like that as well. So, yeah, they can reach out to me there.
Awesome. Thank you again, sir. It's been a pleasure.
Very nice. Thanks, Jim. Good on you, mate.
You too.